Hey YouTube fam! If you're looking for high protein breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack ideas that you can feed your large family, then you're in the right place. For breakfast, I served up tofu, sausage, and veggie tortilla paninis with waffle cakes, roasted potatoes, and a side of fresh fruit. This can literally be made as 3 different meals, but today I was going for high protein, comforting, and hearty to help us all get through the morning grind and get us ready for the week ahead. I always start by draining and pressing my tofu to try and get as much water out of it as possible. I then set it aside, and after preheating my oven to 450 degrees and washing and drying my potatoes, I diced and seasoned them with salt, pepper, paprika, and garlic powder, and then tossed them in some olive oil. I set the oven timer for 30 minutes and started to prepare my vegetables for the tofu and roasted potatoes. Today, I used green peppers, colored peppers, tomatoes, spinach, and onions. But really, you can use whatever you have on hand. To my hot pan, I added some vegan butter and then crumbled up some tofu so it could start to cook down. To season the tofu, I used black salt, black pepper, garlic powder, and turmeric. I mixed all the seasonings together really well, and once the tofu started to brown, I added in my colored peppers and half of my onions and let those cook down a bit while I prepare the sausage. Today we use Beyond, but I've been experimenting with homemade sausage and it's actually a lot healthier and more budget friendly, so I'll drop a video on some alternatives to store-bought sausage real soon. After a few minutes, I added the tomatoes and spinach into my tofu, and this also was when my potatoes were almost ready. So I pulled them out of the oven and added the green peppers and onions so they could roast up evenly with the potatoes for the final few minutes. I also had some leftover waffle batter on hand that I needed to use up, but instead of making more waffles, I wanted to experiment and see what would happen if I made pancakes out of them. So while the potatoes roasted, I made exactly 6 waffle cakes, 1 for each of us. The batter was a lot thicker than my usual pancake batter, but they browned up really well, so I knew they'd be a hit, especially with my homemade maple syrup. And last but not least, once the waffle cakes were ready, I assembled my wraps. First with a layer of tofu, then with 1 sausage on each side, and finally with a sprinkle of shredded vegan cheese. Once I assembled 6 of these, I took them over to a hot pan and crisped them up with some melted butter. Start to finish, today's breakfast took a little over an hour to prepare, but the results were worth it. This meal was rich, comforting, and protein-packed. You know it's good when the only sound you hear in the kitchen full of kids is mouths chewing. Since we all had a huge breakfast, I made a much simpler but equally satisfying and protein-rich lunch, coconut chickpea curry. To a hot pan, I added some coconut oil, onions, and cumin seeds. Once the onions cooked down a bit, I added diced ginger and garlic, followed by diced tomatoes. For seasoning, I used salt, turmeric, coriander and cumin powder, and my homemade curry powder mix, which you can get the recipe to in the link below. Lastly, I added some red chili powder for spice, which you can leave out if you prefer it mild. At this point, I added a little bit of water to the pan and covered it up for about 10 minutes. Once the water evaporated and the tomatoes broke down, I added pre-soaked and pre-cooked chickpeas into the pan with a bit more water, and then covered it up again for about 20 minutes to let the flavors of the curry come together. Right at the end, I added some garam masala and mango powder. To make this coconut chickpea curry, I used a refrigerated can of coconut milk and made sure to only mix in the solid milk that formed at the top. This helps ensure that your curry will be rich and creamy and not get too watery. Last but not least, I added some cilantro, and there you have it, fam. A protein-rich, one-pot meal that can be made in just about 30 minutes. Sunday dinner was comfort food at its best. I made the fam some plant-based tenders and paired that up with pinto beans and rice, broccoli mac and cheese, baked potatoes, garlic bread, and a fresh salad. This one definitely put us in a food coma, but it was a meal to remember, y'all. I made all of the beans in the Instant Pot, and for the pinto beans, I started by sauteing some diced onions and peppers with salt, black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, chili powder, smoked paprika, and turmeric. Once the veggie softened, I added in my diced garlic, followed by my pre-soaked and rinsed pinto beans, and some water. I set the Instant Pot on high pressure for about 15 minutes and started to make the broccoli mac. I filled 1 pot of water, and while it heated up, I melted some butter in another pot and started to make a roux by whisking in some flour and plant-based milk. I used soy milk to add extra protein to the mac, but you can use whatever kind you prefer. Make sure to get in there and whisk thoroughly so that you don't get any clumps in your cheese sauce. To give my mac extra flavor and kick, I added hot sauce, jalapeno pepper juice, diced jalapenos, garlic powder, and some Cajun seasoning. Once my sauce started to thicken up, I added in a pack of diced dairy-free Chow Creamy Original Cheese. For the noodles, I used Banza chickpea elbow pasta made with 20 grams of protein and 8 grams of fiber per serving. And right before my pasta was completely cooked, I added in broccoli for additional fiber and nutrition. Once the cheese sauce thickened up and the noodles and broccoli were cooked, I drained them and mixed everything together. At this point, I poured the mac into a parchment-lined baking dish, topped it with Follow Your Heart shredded cheddar and mozzarella, covered it with aluminum foil, and then baked it in a 425-degree oven for about 30 minutes. At the end, I removed the foil and broiled the mac for an additional 5 minutes until the top bubbled and browned up. Dinner is served, y'all. Pinto beans over rice with high-protein broccoli mac and cheese, a baked potato, some leftover homemade cheesy garlic bread, fresh green salad, and my kids' favorite plant-based tenders. Now, if your family is anything like mine and they can't go a whole day without having snacks on deck, then these unreal dark chocolate peanuts are a great solution. They're vegan, gluten-free, non-GMO, and will give you 3 grams of protein per serving, which isn't so shabby for a chocolate treat that everyone will love and absolutely devour. And this, my friends, was the perfect way for my vegan family of 6 to end our day. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more plant-based recipes and inspiration.